Now the whole role reverses when we go to humid soils. Just do a flip-flop. Here we have a soil that is going to have high organic content. We've had a lot of plant growth. We're going to have a lot of organic material. Nature is leaching it constantly. It's being leached all the time because where we have high humidity, we have high rainfall. It has low pH. It's going to be a little acidic to severely acidic, depending on how much organic decomposition is occurring and just what the nature of the plants are that are growing in the area. You know, you go to the west side of this state and you see some absolutely phenomenal rhododendrons. On the east side of the state, it's awful hard to grow a rhododendron. Well, one of the main reasons is the soil type. Real high pH soils, rhododendrons can't live in at all. They need low pH. They like that 5.5 pH instead of 7.5 pH that we give them over here on this side of the mountains. And they will thrive in that low pH soil. And they don't grow worth a hoot where there's high pH. They also like it really moist. They like a lot of humidity in the air. And they like a lot of surface moisture. Certain plants have certain natural characteristics. And they like, that's the nature of a rhodie, is to grow surface roots. They don't grow deep tap roots like many plants. They work off the surface. So you can grow rhododendrons in eastern Washington, but you got to do a few things. You got to water them very regularly, like every day or every other day minimum. And you got to adjust the pH of the soil. And then they would really like to, during the hot days when it's really hot out, they'd like to be misted during the afternoon to cool them down. And they like to be in the shade generally. Most of them like the shade, yeah. But you got to do a few things for certain plants, and because it's a humid climate plant, it's hard to grow it in an arid climate. We have to trick that plant to grow it here in eastern Washington.
But you can do it.
You bet. It can be done, but we have to work pretty hard at it. Now, we talk about humid. Some of you guys are going to work with humid soil irrigation. Those of you that particularly in the turf trade that work in the west side of Oregon and Washington, you're going to be in a humid climate condition. And you have a whole different set of rules to work with when you're looking at irrigation than do people on the more arid east side of the two states. And so you have to be aware of the differences as you irrigate. You can irrigate too frequently and create a heck of a pathogen problem on the west side of the mountains. Keep things too wet all the time, you're going to get bacteria and fungus like you never wanted show up in places. You create diseases potential for yourself. So you almost have to be careful of the over irrigation than you do under irrigation and a lot of the conditions you get into on the west side of the state. It's pretty hard to over irrigate on the east side, except ends up creating leaching of nutrients down below the root zone. And that is another problem within itself, where we get groundwater contamination by over irrigation and leaching not only the nutrients but also some of the chemicals that are being applied and getting them down into the groundwater, where you're contaminating drinking water or even getting it running off into surface streams and contaminating surface streams as well. So we do have some considerations there with soil. Where you have easily leached soils, you really have to monitor how much water you put on, because you just keep pouring the water on, it'll keep taking it. It just keeps going down deeper and deeper and deeper. It doesn't flood and puddle and run off. It keeps absorbing it. You're just wasting it.
It brings the salt up too.
No, it takes it down. As long as you're putting water in the ground, the salt will dissolve with the moisture, and it will stay on the wetted front, and it will actually push the salt down in the profile. As it dries out, then the salt comes back up to the surface. So that is the twist there.
Then you get down in there The hard pan, all that water going down.
Yeah, then we can get, then if you reach an area where you hit a profile change that is severe, like a water table or a hard pan layer or a total change in parent material. It might be, shoot, it might be a basalt rock in this country. There's nowhere for the water to go. So then it'll start ponding up, to fill the profile up to where you actually start ponding on the surface, because you've run out of place for the water to leach down. It'll hit a barrier down there in some conditions. Now, last thing for this section is, where do you find this information out about these soils? Well, every county around this part of the world has a soil survey. And so you can go straight to a soil survey and find out what you want about the soils in an area. And I got a couple. Some of these are a little older than others, but I have a survey for Walla Walla County. And this thing dates back to the early 60s. And in fact, this actually was printed in 1957, this soil survey. Now we know soils don't change a whole lot over a few years. I mean, that's a very few years in the life of a soil. 57 to 90, 40 years, that's nothing in the life of a soil. And it has an aerial photo of every square foot of Walla Walla County. And from these aerial photos, we can find any given field and any given site in a field, and it tells us what the soil type is all over this entire county. Right on the map. We can find it visually. And those have not changed significantly over the last 40 years, except where they've gone in and done land leveling. But soil survey. And I got one for Benton County. Similar vintage. This is 1971 for Benton County, a little newer, but again exactly the same stuff. Maps of every square foot of the county and what the soil type is. And then I got one, Umatilla County, and this is a much newer model, I believe. Let's see what the date is on this guide. And much more intensive bits of material, 1988. And you can see same size counties, all of these counties are about the same size, but boy, our information has improved a lot in the newer surveys, so we have a lot better information. But again, the exact same surface maps. We can find, if we know where we're at in the county, we can find a location and the soil types of a given field to be able to do our evaluation. And then it just gives all kinds of information about those individual soils within the text of the survey. So we can get lots and lots of great information from these individual county soil surveys.